Okay. Let's see. I think we're good. Okay. My cat hopefully is going to stay quiet during this. In fact, really quickly, let me just close the door. Yeah, if he makes noise, it's fine. It'll be fine. Um, all right. Let's see. Why don't we start off with um let's start off with the beginning of your journey, Antonia. Tell us, how did you feel at the beginning of junior year when you were first starting the college admissions process?
Okay, yeah. So my school was actually, I'm lucky. I was very good to, they start us early just talking about it and letting you know and having college fairs. We were able to take the PSAT. I think I'd already taken it twice. So I kind of realized that that was on the horizon somewhere. And even if I wasn't necessarily like studying super hardcore, I knew about a couple colleges. My parents went to college, so I knew like that was something I was going to do and that I wanted to do. But I was a little bit nervous for specifically the SAT side because I'd gotten decent scores on the PSAT in the past, but I wasn't necessarily very naturally like super gifted. I knew it at that point, like for my scores, that I was kind of, I would say just like an average necessarily, like average, maybe like a little bit better than average. And I also, I was a good student, I would say, like ever since like ninth grade when I really like started thinking about, oh, my grades are starting to matter. So I knew that that was something I wanted to do. And that was kind of all I knew like in the beginning of junior year that, oh, there are colleges out there. Gonna have to take the SAT. That's important, keeping my grades up. And yeah, so it started off with just like a small amount of knowledge and then also my like desire to start to learn more. So I guess that was the beginning.
Awesome, thank you. And just so you know, I don't think anyone would ever consider you an average student. You are a superstar because you always put forth so much effort. So I just that's all right. Next question up, and you might have touched on this a little bit. What was the most stressful part of the college admissions process?
Oh, this is sort of ongoing, and I feel like a lot of kids, I know my friends feel it, and I'm sure basically every student feels it, but there's a lot of uncertainty, and you can take that with just looking at the SAT or just in general the college admissions process. There's so much work to be done, and you're not necessarily promised any results. You know, you always hope for the best, and everyone around you is hoping for the best for you and supporting you. But at the end of the day, it's really personal, and that can make the successes feel that much better because you're like, oh, this is something I have, you know, solely individually earned. I've done this, but also in terms of failure or setbacks. For me, when that happened, even small things seem really big because it's, you know, like your future and it's all up to you. And that's how it feels, even if you have a great support system, which I did. But it still felt at times like so singular and you're not used to that, I guess, as a kid growing up. And so I would say that is just a stressful part, and I'm still going through it now, even though, you know, I've crossed some milestones. I'm a senior now, but I know that for me right now, the uncertainty of, you know, whether you're going to get into colleges of your choice and all the decisions, you do your best, but at the end of the day, all your work, it pays off in one sense, but not everything's always going to go your way. So I guess that would be kind of the stress that I feel like the most.
Great. Yeah, great answer. Now, you recently found out that were a National Merit Scholarship recipient. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm not like a finalist or anything, but I got the National Merit, the Commended Scholar. Yes.
Great. Now that was based on your junior year PSAT score, is that right?
Yes, my final PSAT.
Did you know going into it the impact that that test was going to have on the your future?
I vaguely knew that they handed out awards, but it was like for the top 3 or 4%. So I was like, that's not something I need to think about. So I vaguely knew that it was important. Of course, I knew as I got older it would be more important. So when I took it, I think for the first time in ninth grade, I wasn't too stressed out. And then 10th grade, I was like, oh, then I started, I think, to first learn about the National Merit Scholarships. And then my junior year, my school did a good job of being like, hey, like try your best. And I luckily, I think, had already taken one test after having worked with Clayborne. And so I was kind of like a little bit in my groove at that point. I can definitely attribute my success, I think, to working with Clayborne because before that, looking at my previous scores, I would not have qualified into those top percentages. And I don't think I'd ever really thought about myself like winning any of those awards, I guess.
Well, you did, and we are very, very proud of you.
Thank you.
Okay, next question. So you performed better on test day than your previous practice test. I think 95% of the students want to know, how did you do that?
Yeah. In some sense it's kind of like, yeah, like you never know. Like I never thought, I think one thing that's important is I never thought actively of that, of like, oh, I have to get better, each time, like as time moves forward, I need to be better. But I think I had a really good, and you really especially helped me develop a really good pre-test day plan. And I think I took that super seriously when it was official test day, not that I didn't during our practice test, but I think that I'd gone through so much preparation, all three times, I guess, I'd taken it, and I came off good practice tests. And I had this great, like in running, we do tapering season for like our like TCIS and states. And each time I made sure to kind of do that after a solid performance on a practice test. And I made sure to kind of take time, go over any small questions. And then I had that great kind of like 3 days before was when I really started like almost kind of getting in the mind, like in the like frame of mind of being like, okay, I'm gonna be taking this test. I don't want to be like too like stressed, but I don't want to be too calm either. I kind of be right in the middle. I like did my exercise like you always told me to do before. I like would watch my favorite movie the night before. I had such a good routine and it wasn't crazy. Like I wasn't taking a practice test the night before. And I feel like because of those carefully cultivated habits, that really helped me in the long run. I'm so happy that I always did better on the official test day because obviously that's what you always sort of want to do. But yeah, I didn't actively think of it, I just tried to stay like in my frame of mind that I knew I had been preparing for all along.
Well, yeah, again, we're very proud of you, and it's great to hear that you followed through with that routine.
Yes.
Now, tell me a little bit. So you took a break during your SAT prep. How do you think that affected your overall results in the end?
Yeah, it helped a lot, obviously. And I'm really happy I took the break. I think it sounds I knew to me it sounded actually kind of counterintuitive, and it was frustrating going in with that plan because we did have that plan that if I didn't, if I'd scored a 1600 or something, I'm sure we would not have taken it again. But we had that plan going in of, okay, well, if you get a score that you're happy with, you can always keep it, or you can kind of take a break and try to, get a better score. And I'd had kind of that dream, which was a little bit just like an individual kind of personal thing more than necessarily like that's what's going to get me into college. But I had that dream of breaking 1500. So I scored well, and I thought, ooh, taking another test like a month or 2 months from now, that could lead me to be a bit rushed, I guess. And I was lucky because I had started my journey early on, which is something I'll definitely advocate for any other students who are going like who are beginning kind of their journey to start early. And I had the time. And as frustrating as it was, and kind of like, oh no, you're going to lose information, I knew that I had built a solid foundation. And I knew I had the time, and I knew I would have the sustained desire, I guess, to still do better later. And so I took some time off, also got better at math through that because I got to go through pre-calculus and some of calculus in my junior and senior year. And I came back, I think you remember, a bit rusty, but I had kind of developed a little bit more maturity in math in terms of I just had progressed further in high school. And then also, when you build such a strong foundation that I did with Clayborne, not much was truly lost. It kind of just needed sharpening up. And so I came back and I did better than I'd ever done before. So I think even though it requires some patience and long-term thinking, I'm really happy that I took the break because it's kind of like, I don't know, like I grew as a person like during the time period because I first started Claiborne when I was way younger, and it's been like 2 years I think since I like actually, or a year and a half since I actually started. So it's been a while.
So if you would give advice for younger students, when is the ideal time for them to start thinking about this process?
Um, in terms of the SAT, I mean, technically it's never too early, I guess, but I think honestly, I think sophomore year in a way can be kind of a good time. It sounds so early, honestly, but it can actually be a really good time to start thinking of it. I know that I started thinking about in sophomore year first, and I really started committing in junior year. I think a big mistake would be to do it too late into junior year. So I think that's why, like coming out of sophomore year, it's good to really start to hammer down a plan because when I went to Clayborne, like we came in with a plan of like what we wanted to do, where we wanted to be. So even if sophomore year you're not like heavily like cranking into the books and stuff like that, or have an actual official test date planned out, I think it's good to start at least setting goals for yourself and know kind of where you want to be, because that's what helped me through my journey, because I knew I had this goal, I had this plan, and all I needed to do was kind of just like have some like dedication, have some grit, and like keep going through it. So I think sophomore year is really a good time to lay out your foundation, kind of as I said before.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about a support system. How involved were your parents throughout the process, and what was the best thing they did to help you?
Yeah. I'm really lucky, and I know a lot of people are not as lucky as me. My parents are really awesome. They were very supportive. I think the best thing, they did so many good things, honestly, that have helped me throughout this. But one, honestly, being connected with Clayborne, which is honestly lucky in a way. I don't live where Clayborne is based, so I was really lucky to have been connected through family friends, through my parents' friends with Clayborne. And I think them taking the time to research and connect with you guys and to get me like a real solid like tutoring like system, another support system in a way, because although my parents couldn't, test me on SAT, like that's not their specialty, but what they did was find me people who like were amazing at that and who could totally support my goals and my dreams of achieving better scores. So I think that was like, I think about it so much, and I think about how lucky I am that they did that. So anyone's parents who ever, connect them with Clayborne, like that's just an amazing thing. And to keep my parents weren't pushy, they were supportive. And I think that's exactly parents, like the perfect role to not put pressure, but at the same time to kind of remind me at least, or any other students, of their goal, and not to get distracted, because when it's easy to like sit back saying all these things, but that kind of year and a half that I was working, it felt much harder than saying this now, because you have so many things going on. And I could never be like thankful enough for my parents kind of being there and kind of be like, you can do this, but not like overstepping at the same time being like, you have to do this, like leaving it up to me and letting kind of my like my dedication like shine through, because that's how you really get better. Because if your heart's not in it, I think it's very hard to really progress.
Yeah, great. That's great. Um, so uh yeah, I guess kind of thinking about um the fact that you did virtual tutoring, do you think, and if you could just speak to did you find at any point virtual tutoring was not as good as in-person tutoring?
Yeah, to be honest, I've never really been tutored in person. So I can't necessarily, I've been taught in person before, but I didn't actually find there to be anything lacking with online Zooming. I feel like I developed a great connection with both of my tutors. I learned definitely almost as much as one could hope to about the SAT, I would say. I learned almost, I feel like all there is to learn. And I think it's actually in a way very convenient. Maybe it's because I grew up in a Zoom era because all of my high school experience happened after COVID, but I think in a lot of ways it's very convenient. I was always able to do after school as someone who's busy, as I know a lot of kids are with sports and extracurriculars, being able to like log into a Zoom and learn over. And you guys, being prepared and having like the systems to actually properly teach me math and English over Zoom, I didn't feel anything was lacking at all, and I had a good experience.
Yeah, that's great. What do you think the best advice you received during the college admissions process was?
Hmm.
From anybody, parents, counselors, anyone?
I think there's so many things people because you need a lot of coaching through it, but I think and kind of the thing I've been saying a lot during this interview is to start early and to be prepared and to have a plan. And that's not necessarily like very fun motivational, I guess, advice, but it's kind of like that hard or that like that truth, that fundamental truth that I feel like it was behind my successes is that I went out early, did my work when other people weren't necessarily thinking of it. And that's kind of why I was able to progress, not because I'm just like the smartest person ever or anything, but it's because I had like a desire to do something and I took the time and I did it like chunk by chunk, because whether it's just the SAT or you're looking at the entire college admissions process, it's so much stuff, it's like it's another running comparison, it's like a marathon. And I ran it like piece by piece and I'm still not finished yet, but I've been able to hit significant markers because, you start early on. So, and so many people have told me that, from my counselors to my parents to you guys, but I think it's been sort of a message that keeping in my head, I think it's good to think of like that, like you're not sprinting, you're got to just keep on going. And that's something that's helped me through, like just keep on running, keep on chugging, I guess, whatever you want to say to yourself. But yeah.
Now, what are your plans after graduation?
Uh, after high school
High
graduation,
school graduation, yeah.
hopefully to go to college. Immediately after high school, I think I did this last summer, but I think I'm going to be teaching again. I don't know if it's because I've been tutored for the first time in my life, but there's something fun about tutoring kids in my area. So I think I've been inspired by that a lot. Hopefully also I'll be entering college a couple months after high school graduation. I don't know. I don't have huge plans specifically, but just something like that.
Would you ever consider coming and being a tutor for Clayborne?
Clayborne, I don't know if I'm qualified enough to be
Oh,
a tutor, but
you are so qualified in so many different ways.
I actually do like teaching. I'm also teaching a student online, like through Zoom. So at least I'd have a little bit of experience doing something like that. Uh, yeah, I don't know, Clayborne, very cool. I like the Charlottesville area actually a lot. This is kind of personal moment, but I did apply to UVA finally. So just because I knew I had told you about that before, but yeah, I applied to UVA. So that's something that
That's exciting. All right. So, fun question. What's your favorite way to decompress after an SAT?
ooh, after an SAT, I It was actually fun. I think all 3 times I took the SAT, I had like plans with friends, or like actually like I would go out like after the SAT, and it sounds kind of weird because you think like, oh, like you'll be really tired, but I found it was really good to have something like active, like that I was like, looking forward to, that's exciting after, and it kind of helps get your mind off like all the stuff or all the stress you've been through. So I always made sure to plan something with my friends or have like dinner with my family or something like that. And that would just be kind of be a nice moment to be like, oh, like I just did that. But that's a big accomplishment you've just had. There's still the stress of getting scores back, but here in this moment right now, you did something pretty amazing. And there's other cool aspects of your life too. So don't get too caught up, in this one part. Look like you have these awesome friends, this awesome family, and it's just like another thing that you do, and you do a lot of cool things. So yeah, that helped me.
That's great. And it might dovetail into my last question for you. If a student were to come up to you and say, I'm taking the SAT this Saturday. I'm so nervous. I feel like I'm going to just completely bomb it. I'm never even getting into college. What would you tell them to help them ease their stress?
Yeah, I definitely had to go through this quite a few times being a high school student. Lots of my friends, there are always people nervous about the SAT. Um, that one always is a little bit hard for me to answer because I must admit I was never actually too nervous about the SAT because I'm not someone who gets too stressed about the test taking itself. But in terms of trying to help my friends, I always remember telling them, don't be stressed the night before. Like, whatever you do, just have a good routine, drink water, get to sleep early, like, be calm. At the end of the day, there's nothing you're going to really be able to do like the day before. But the week before, like, if there's things that you don't know, like, do a little bit of study. But um, honestly, my advice to them was always just like kind of stay calm. Don't like do anything like crazy, like out of the ordinary, like take a whole practice test the night before. I think that at the end of the day, it's 1 week from it and you're kind of super stressed, to just like be confident in yourself, because at that point, that's really all you can do for yourself that's going to actually be helpful. So wherever you are, whether like that person has studied a lot and is still really stressed, or they actually haven't studied and they have a real reason, to be stressed. There's no point in kind of making things worse by being like crazy like the week before. So I think to just like stay calm and do like normal things, like make sure to be healthy, go through a good routine. Yeah, that would always be my advice. But to be honest, I'm not the best person to ask because that was never one of my biggest fears, I guess, about the SAT.
Awesome. Well, Antonia, thank you so much. Is there anything else you'd like to add or anything else you think we didn't cover?
I guess just one thing, because when you first asked me to do this interview, and kind of just as I'm doing it now, I've thinking how much I would have loved someone to, like a student 1 year like ahead of me or 2 years ahead of me, to talk to me about this, because I totally can relate to anyone like starting the SAT process, like not feeling like phenomenal when like there are so many people who like around you, like you feel like are so good like at the SAT, or there's like you've heard of someone who's gotten 1600 and you're like, oh, I can never do that, or I could never get in the 1400s or the 1500s or even 1300s. And I just really would want to tell people that like you never know like what you can do. I would have never imagined that the first time I ever took a practice test, I think I got like a 1200 or something like that. And I remember my parents being like, Antonia, like they're not going to take you seriously like at the tutoring place, like because telling them like my goal of getting above a 1500. But I remember there was something inside me, I was like, no. I was like, I know it doesn't happen often, but it can happen to me. And so I want people just to know that like it is totally possible. It might be like a really long journey, but I think just because something is difficult, and you might not have like known someone who's like done it close to you. Like there's always someone who's done it before you, or someone like who can do it too. So like I don't know, in a way like you can do it also. I don't know. As a student, you kind of like always want to hear of like a case that happened. And I don't know. If I could just make like one kid like feel confident in their journey, like that would mean a lot to me, because I know that I'd kind of really wish for a student like me to like come up and be like on the other side of it, like you can definitely do it, like it is possible. So yeah, I don't know if that was super coherent, but that's kind of like the sentiment I hope can reach someone, if that makes sense.
That makes perfect sense, and it did. Yeah, it was a is a great sentiment, and I think it's going to reach many students.
So
Awesome. Thank you so much again for taking the time to do this.